Welcome to New Possibilities. I speak truth to power without fear. So, yesterday I was listening to the exchange between Charlamagne and Monique, and they were talking about her call for a boycott against Netflix, and they were talking about the offer that she was presented with, and this and that, and she was trying to put out her case for this issue of gender and race discrimination and, trying to explain why she's conducting this boycott or encouraging others to participate in this boycott. And it was a very interesting discussion. For those of you who haven't seen it, I'll include a link in the description box to a video from We Are the Gods or something like that, where they actually reposted her video. So this is what I think about this. I think that it all boils down to a point that Charlamagne was making during this interview. And it can be summed up with one word: numbers. It's all about numbers. It's about the numbers of people that come out to listen to Monique compared to the numbers of people that come out to listen to the others who were offered far better deals, more lucrative deals. And the fact of the matter is, she doesn't measure up to those guys. She doesn't bring out the same kind of numbers that Chris Rock brings out, the same kind of numbers that Dave Chappelle brings out, or same kind of numbers that Amy Schumer brings out. She's not filling up arenas. There's not a large demand to hear her comedy. And that's just a fact. So at the end of the day, it comes down to numbers. Like Netflix is looking for somebody that will generate like a large viewership. That's what they want so that they can increase their dollar value, to increase and maximize their profits. And the fact of the matter is, she doesn't draw that kind of crowd. So she's not going to garner that kind of money. It's really that simple. This don't have anything to do with her race. Doesn't have anything to do with her gender. Because you have black people on Netflix that have received lucrative deals with Netflix. And you have women that have received lucrative deals on Netflix. So it's not a gender or race issue. Now, some people will bring up Wanda Sykes. They will cite her as an example of Netflix discriminating against black women. But it's important to point out that even Wanda Sykes, she's not in demand like that. If there was a black comedian that had the same kind of crowd as these others, then you would have a strong argument for race and gender discrimination. But here you don't have that situation. What Monique did a long time ago doesn't even matter right now. It's all about how much of a crowd she can draw right now. That's what it's about. It's not about her getting some Oscar. At the end of the day, an Oscar in and of itself doesn't translate into money for Netflix. So so that's one issue. The fact that she's not bringing those kind of numbers. Then it's another issue, like her attitude. There are plenty of people that report that she's difficult to work with, and that's something that was cited during this interview on the Breakfast Club. People cited examples of people complaining about this woman and her interaction with others. And you kind of get a sense of how she's difficult to work with based on these appearances that she's constantly doing. I saw this video where she's arguing with some radio hosts for asking her some questions. She's just combative, and I can understand why people aren't willing to work with her. Like, instead of going into that Breakfast Club interview and just talking about the issues, she tried to basically um, break down the guy Charlemagne and disrespect him. Knowing that his stage name or whatever is Charlemagne, she's referring to him by his first government name, using his first name, his government name and stuff like that, disrespecting him. And then, talking about, would you want your mother to be called a donkey and this and that? Would your grandmother be a donkey? Because they dealt with discrimination. And I think that whole approach was combative. And it just exemplifies what people have been saying about this woman, that she's difficult to work with. And in terms of drawing that comparison between people who face discrimination under Jim Crow and her current situation, I think it's BS, man. I think this whole call for a boycott is BS. It's another situation where you somewhat have someone politicizing their individual problem, trying to make it into some black issue, trying to make it into some discrimination issue. It's a classic example of playing the race card. You all know that I talk about racism on here constantly. I deal with racism on here. I speak out on racism. And, I think that racism in this society is a very important issue. And when you have somebody like a Monique try to exploit race for a personal gain and for personal purposes, it cheapens our struggle. It disrespects our legitimate claims, our legitimate fight against racism. It's another example of somebody acting and behaving like a charlatan, man. This is not some race issue. This is an issue of somebody that the marketplace doesn't find to be valuable at this point. Netflix doesn't see her as worth all these dollars. And if she wasn't satisfied with the deal with Netflix, she could have gone elsewhere. And as they pointed out, as she even acknowledged, there's no market for her. Like, there aren't people clamoring to get a deal with Monique to get them on their streaming service or get them to do anything. So, again, for this, I do believe that she deserved that donkey of the year. I mean, a donkey of the day or whatever it's called. She deserved that. She earned it for exploiting the struggle for personal gain. And this is not the same thing as a Colin Kaepernick. Not at all, not by any stretch of the imagination. I've seen, people draw comparisons between the two, basically saying you support Colin Kaepernick, but you don't support this sister. Colin Kaepernick got in his situation not because of some personal issue. This brother was speaking out against police brutality. This brother was speaking out, using his body to protest against police brutality, the killing of black people. The police, protesting against police, inflicting death and destruction on the black community. And he was protesting against that. And because of that, he has been persecuted. He's been blackballed and blacklisted. This woman wasn't protesting against anything. That's not why she's facing problems in Hollywood. She's facing problems for a number of reasons. Like, for one, her being difficult to work with, as cited in that Breakfast Club interview. They cited all these examples. And then she's making example after example herself when she goes on these shows and argues with people and this and that. She's not helping herself by doing this, by appearing on all these shows trying to justify this ridiculous boycott. She's only hurting herself. She's got all these problems with all these people. Something's wrong with all these people and nothing's wrong with her. That's the problem. The problem is, instead of having her husband be her manager, she needs a real manager, because he obviously doesn't know what the hell he's doing and he's hurting her career. And when somebody has these personal business, these personal ties to someone, like they have this personal relationship with someone, their judgment is cloudy. They're not seeing issues the way they should. They're not approaching things with an objective, business-like kind of approach. They're approaching things with their emotions all wrapped up into it. This guy is not a good manager. She needs a new manager. And I think that her career would go further if she had a better manager, if she had some better people around her to try to improve her brand and improve the way she interacts with others. So those are my thoughts about this, man. I will say this. There's one thing that I want to point out. And, there had been some news reports that she had been offered $3 million from Netflix if she auditioned for Netflix. And so far, we haven't seen any kind of concrete proof of that. We've seen proof of the offer that she's discussed, the $500,000 offer that Netflix presented, but we haven't seen any tangible proof of this other offer. So that has to be pointed out. That part of the record has to be corrected. And the deal that they offered her was garbage. I get that it was trash. But the fact of the matter is, staging a protest and politicizing and racializing something that's non-racial is not the way that you address that. You use the marketplace to address that. You go to other venues to try to get a better deal. What you do is get out there and put in that work to prove yourself. You fill those arenas and prove the critics wrong. That's how you get a better deal. You don't get a better deal by calling out all these people, by getting on all these programs, arguing with people. That just undermines your brand. It perpetuates this idea that you're difficult to work with. And, somebody that's in the comedy business, it doesn't help you to be looked upon as somebody who's not funny. You're not presenting yourself as a comedian in these interviews. So those are my thoughts about this little, back and forth between Charlamagne and Monique. Again, the bottom line is she earned that donkey of the day. They didn't mess that up. They were right and on point for naming her the donkey of the day. Instead of working on fake issues of racism, let's deal with the real ones.